Hey friends, Graham here from the recordingrevolution.com, and today I have a special treat for you. I recently got to sit down and interview one of hip-hop's best mixers. His name's Irko. He's an Italian, bow-tie-wearing hip-hop mixing guy. He's mixed guys from Jay-Z to Kanye to Pitbull, Jennifer Lopez, working on some of the industry's top tracks. He's one of the most humble guys you meet, and I recently got to interview him at Hybrid Studios in California, and we talked about not only hip-hop mixing, but how to approach mixing in general. How does he know when a mix is done? One of his biggest hacks to getting his mixes to sound good, and something interesting called the half dB rule. I'm calling it that because it makes total sense that he uses towards the end of a mix. We unpack his process, a little bit about his story, and even his biggest mixing mistake, something he wished he knew when he was beginning mixing that he wanted to pass on to you. It's all inside this action-packed little interview. I think you're going to enjoy it. I think you're going to learn a lot and get inside the mind of one of today's greatest mixers. If you haven't already checked him out, he's got a great YouTube channel. I'll put all that information here below the video and at the end of the video. But sit back, relax, and enjoy this interview with my good friend, Irko. Hey guys, Graham from the recordingrevolution.com. Special treat today because I'm out of the NAMM show and hanging out here at Hybrid Studios for a little fun after day 2, and I'm sitting next to a guy wearing the exact same jean color as me, Mr. Irko. Very talented producer. Mixing is really his specialty. If you ever listen to Jay-Z, Jennifer Lopez, Kanye, Pitbull, this guy has done their work, and I love it because he's an Italian bow tie wearing hip-hop mixing dude, and it doesn't make sense. But Irko, I just wanted to say thanks for hanging out with us and thanks for letting us do this.
Thank you for having me, of course. Yeah, it is weird, right?
But it's like your look.
Yeah, it's my thing. It's my thing. I kind of made it, when I was in New York a few years back, right? I was working at Bad Boy, and that kept coming up, you know, the Italian guy with the tie. I was wearing ties at the time. And I just kind of felt like I should just rock it out, and here you go. So, oh no, wait. Then YouTube came, and I started shooting POVs with my GoPro strapped to my chest. Oh, yeah. Couldn't wear the tie then. Enter the bow tie.
Oh, so it's a practical thing.
It's kind of a practical, but then it became like a thing. So, you know, and then it expanded to the wooden bow ties, the cement bow ties, and all the other crazy stuff.
That's awesome. Well, he's got an awesome YouTube channel. I want to get to that in a minute, but I want to be able to basically introduce you to my audience to get a little bit maybe of your background, and maybe we can talk a little bit about mixing approach also, because that's what you're really, really good at. So how does an Italian guy start working on Jay-Z and Pitbull, and like how does it, what's the story? Because I love your story, but what's maybe a short, like how did you get to where you are today kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a funny story because I kind of say jokingly that I learned English by listening to hip-hop music, right? Which is a little bit of an exaggeration, but it kind of is kind of that, you know. Like, I mean, in Italy, I study it, you know, on books and stuff at school, right. You know, kind of like how here Spanish is taught. But then, you know, I kind of got attracted to the audio of hip-hop records. And at the time, this genre was the only one that really offered that massive, larger-than-life boom-bap drums. And that was it to me. It was always about audio for me. Audio was always first. Right. And then it just so happened to be hip-hop music, and then it just kind of happened that I fell in love with it, and, you know, started DJing, started producing, started doing little bands at the time. Back in those days, Wu-Tang was a big deal. Yeah. So you had, you know, the one producer guy and then like 15 guys rapping on your tracks, right? So I definitely can't compare myself to No Reza, but I was kind of like the Reza of the situation when I was making the beats, and then a lot of people would rap on them. And then, you know, fast forward many years later, I get to New York, and yeah, it just so kind of happened that, you know, my first big thing was on Kingdom Come. And, you know, that was my Jay-Z plaque that came in the mail a couple of months later, which was interesting, yeah.
And that opens doors too.
Yeah, of course. Whenever you have, you know, the stamp of approval of a guy like that, of that magnitude, doors start to open a little easier, I guess. You know, it wasn't like, oh yeah, come here, mix my record. It wasn't like that. It never is. Still to this day, it's not. And I'm sure you know about that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, you know, 20 years doing this from my dad's garage to Hybrid Studios, I guess.
Yeah.
With this guy.
Well, so funny story is like how we connected on on Facebook. Like I think I never am like on Facebook enough, and I'm randomly on it one day, and then there's this guy saying, "Hey, does anybody know how I can get a hold of Grant Cochran?" I'm like driving through Florida, and I'm like, "Yeah, hey, here I am." And I was like, Irko, like, because I started to see some of your videos, and I love the one video you have where you're like promoting your mixing, where you're like, this is what your mix like sounds like before I mix it, and it's all grainy anyway. So I like knew who you were from some of your videos. I was like, you can come hang out. That'd be awesome, dude. That was an honor. So you were just like road tripping, right?
Yeah. So it was last year around this time-ish.
Yeah, it was close,
more or less. And I happened to be in Florida, and I went to Cape Canaveral to see a SpaceX launch. And I was like, I don't know how, because, I knew about you. Of course, I was following your videos, but I wasn't sure that you were in Florida. But then maybe when I looked it up, I saw that you were in Tampa. I was like, oh, I'm here. I need to holler at this guy, right? And so, I tried different online, Facebook, the email, but you never really know. Plus, I really hate to say, hey, could you please, like, say hi? Like, But then, I show up in Tampa with my CV, and I said, hey, Grant, can I maybe intern for you? But of course,
that's not what happened.
I was seriously under qualified for that.
No.
So that didn't happen.
Yeah, he didn't make the cut from intern. my 0 interns. I did get asked that, like, do you have interns? Which is awesome. You could sweep my kitchen floor. Like, literally, I'm in my house. Like, you could do all.
I do too. They always ask me.
Yeah. So anyway, it was fun. I'm glad that we connected.
Absolutely.
So before we get into your videos, like let's talk about mixing. So I don't really mix a lot of hip hop. I had a lot of friends that did hip hop. So in college, when I was doing anything and everything, I was the only guy they knew I was mixing their records, and it was fun. But talk about maybe you get a typical track. What state are those tracks in when you get them? Like, how good are they? What is they missing? And how do you approach them? What do you hear in your head? Like, okay, this is what it needs. And how do you know what to do to your tracks? And what are you doing in the mixing phase? Kind of what's your go-to?
So how the files populate on my end, it really varies.
Okay.
Some of them are recorded in somebody's kitchen, and some other ones are recorded in full-on facilities like this. Yeah. And they're fantastic.
Yeah.
Of course, I always hope for that kind of files to show up, but it's not always the case. So there's a lot of problem solving sometimes. But also sometimes when I see that there's like drastic problems, distortion, mic being, backwards.
Tell me you don't get those.
It has happened, yes. I mean, it doesn't happen every day, but it has happened. That's why I actually build all of my sessions prior to start working on them.
Okay.
So, if anything is like very, very wrong or files are missing or whatever, I just send it back or say, hey, I need this and this and that. So that's kind of how they populate on my end. In terms of the mixing, I study the rough mix heavy before I get onto any plugins or anything. I try to see what their vision was and try to implement it and make it, the more bombastic version of it.
Right. Are they sending you tracks with plugins and everything?
Yes.
And do you start off of that, or do you wipe that all clean?
I always start where they stopped.
Okay.
So I never take those off unless it's completely wrong, or if I know that I can do it better, which does happen. But for the most part, I start where they stopped. And the reason for that is, they already put some sort of touch on the session, So I feel like I owe them to pick up where they left off and take it to the next step. Now, just yesterday, actually, a session got sent to me and it was corrupt, so I couldn't open the plugins.
Oh, gotcha.
If I did, my whole system would crash, right? So in that case, I was like, okay, I need to talk to them and see what they want me to retain or not, or just, So that's an example. But I usually listen to the rough. I have the song really speak to me and go with what the song really says that it needs, I don't like to impose too much, Okay. But then once that's done, I try to do my little drops and, my little, extra little producer almost touches to it.
Okay, so you will do some production stuff.
I mean, it's part of my mixing. I don't really call myself a producer any longer, but it's Yeah, I would say it's a little bit of spice it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So and then sometimes I get the producers that's like, oh yeah, man, this is incredible, and then some others are like, oh no, bro, no.
Well, that's because I get that question a lot. Like,
Yeah.
isn't that not mixing? It's like, dude, make it sound cool. And
Yeah.
if they don't like it, they'll tell you. You can undo it.
Exactly. There's always Comenzi, and how they did the We Are All the World, where they had a sign saying check the egos at the door before walking in, and they had all these celebrities working together. I'm definitely not a celebrity, but I definitely check my ego at the door when I start working on stuff, because I want to make sure that they get what they want, and ultimately that's the way it's supposed to be, and that's how I get a call back too. So
yeah. So what would you say for someone that works on hip hop? What's different about mixing a hip hop record versus, say, mixing rock record with acoustic drums and guitars? Like, in terms of sonics, what are some different things that probably you're doing that are different than what I would do?
Right. Well, I feel like for band-like material, recording is almost as important as mixing, because it's an analog sound that comes from a room through microphones, through preamps, phase. You talked about phase cancellation in your drums a couple of weeks back or something. That's a big thing, For electronic stuff, it's virtually never. It's not a real thing,
right?
It's a digital thing, So there's a little less of stress on the recording side of things, also because most of the time the only recorded thing is the vocal,
right?
So it's a little different, and also priorities. Of course, the aesthetics are different. When you have the big 808s and the drums and stuff, the space that they occupy in a mixing scenario is way different than like if you get a Drake record, and the big things that populate on the mix, say music, drums, and vocals, are very, very differently balanced than on a Black Keys record. It's completely different.
For sure.
It's not. I'm not saying that I like one better than the other, but it's different.
Yeah. And then so like. I get the question a lot. So since you're working on a lot of electronic music, I get the question a lot. Like, well, Graham, should I approach mixing like virtual instruments or loops or beats or things different than regular stuff? Like, should I not do anything since it already sounds cool? Like, if you imagine someone in their own home studio, they're producing their own music, and they pull up a VI or they make a beat, and they're like, that's the sound that came out of the thing. You're taking those sounds and then doing more to them. Yeah. So like, what are you doing to those things to make it more bombastic? Because I think my students who are trying to mix their own stuff, like, what else do I do? It sounds cool.
Yeah. Well, no, you got a point. Sometimes I may have done it too much, and it feels like it's on steroids, and maybe the song doesn't require it. Okay. So that's why I always rely on what the song is saying. So for example, if I work with a producer that's sample based off of MPCs or stuff like that, I may not go for the super crazy crisp clap sounding drums that I would find in an 808 bass production. So it's a little bit different. But I mean, I would say and I think you talk about this pretty often. Go with the flow. Go with what's the sound. It doesn't matter what plugin you're using or what techniques you're using. It's about the ultimate, the product. The ultimate test is the song. So I will go with the flow and see what it is. And if you feel like you're in a position where the producer has given you everything that's there as is, and he needs to stay that way, then of course it's all communication. You gotta talk to the guy or the girl and make sure that the requirements are met. Yeah. And sometimes you got to ask questions. Most of the times you got to ask questions because they assume that the mixer is inside of their head.
Right.
It doesn't happen that way.
No.
So, talk. Communication is big. It's very big. Which is actually kind of funny because a lot of my clients are spread out all over the world. And maybe sometimes there's like language barriers too. So sometimes, you got to really feel it out and see,
What do you mean by that word? Yeah.
Yeah, like it's cool. It's cool could mean it's cool or it's cool. Whatever.
That makes sense. I mean, we're in a service-based business, and it's hard. You have to communicate to serve. Yeah. Now, so a lot of people that follow my stuff do everything themselves. So maybe they're not working on client music; they're mixing their own stuff. So they actually are so close to the material, it's hard to know what else there is to do to it, to how much farther they can take it. Would you say? And I don't know if you use, but would you say that referencing other mixes is helpful? Like something in a similar genre, like pulling up a track that you're trying to emulate and go like, wow, that low end just hit so hard. What can I do to make my low end Do you do any of that, like referencing or?
I would say that for someone that's involved in the production of a record from the beginning to the end, that will be absolutely the key to really try to detach yourself a little bit from the product. And not only referencing, but referencing in different scenarios. So reference in the studio, reference in the car, reference in the headphones. Because, you know, those things, I mean, of course, it's always kind of unjust because you're comparing a mix to a mastered thing.
Sure.
Oftentimes very famous, oftentimes, you know, coming from $1 million production. So it's, you know, it's kind of
makes you depressed. That's why most people don't like to reference. Like, dude, I suck compared to this. But it's also the goal. You're trying to get closer to that.
Absolutely. I remember when I was in my dad's garage and I was doing that, what kind of reference do I pick? Dr. Dre 2001, which is the holy grail for hip-hop mixing, right?
Good choice, though.
Probably the best sounding record in hip-hop history ever, probably. Arguably, but, you know. So, you know, I was comparing my little, you know, mixes I was doing on my 001 or 002, was it? 002, yeah, I think.
I had one for like 7 years.
Yeah, and I was, okay, like I was here, he was like up here, right? There was just no way. But, you know, that's what got me intrigued enough to keep pushing and learning and more and, you know, doing more of that. You had another video that I was resonating so much when you said something along the lines of when you need creativity, you can't just stop listening to music and stop getting inspired by others, you know? And some people may say, well, but then I'm going to kind of sound like them-ish, right? It's the same thing with engineering. It's the same thing. You know, I'm not going to sound like, you know, Tony Maserati's mix, also because he's a goddamn nobody. But besides that, you know, I have my style. I have my ears. I hear things a certain way, and he does it a different way. But in order for you to be able to grow, absolutely reference all the time at different levels.
Yes.
I used to do like a quiet, mid, loud test. Studio speakers, maybe the NS10s and some bigger ones. And then car, and then headphones, maybe earbuds too. Absolutely reference all day. Because ultimately, especially for electronic stuff, the reference test is a way to see how in an ideal or potential DJ set at a club or in a radio station, how your stuff is going to stack up when played after the hit single that you're after, you know? So yeah, absolutely.
So let me ask you a question, because when it comes to mixing, I feel like a lot of people, out of insecurity, probably you know, when you've done the acts that you've done, you've gotten some acclaim and you've kind of gotten those plaques that say, hey, you're good. That's helpful. But when you don't have that and you have the insecurity of, am I good enough? Have I taken it far enough? You don't know when to stop. You don't know when to stop mixing. You don't know when you're done. And a lot of my students or even friends are like, Graham, I'm mixing for hours and hours and I don't know when I'm done. How do you know when a mix is done, at least done enough to send the first mix to the client and be like, hey, here's my presentation of the mix, assuming you're going to do revisions, but how do you feel confident and know when to ship it out? Yeah,
well, first I always tell them, hey, the first mix is the first mix. It's not perfect. It's not the final one. It will be tweaked. I will take it to perfection once we started a communication chain. The other thing is I never send out a mix the day of the mixing session. Sleep on it. Next day,
that's brilliant.
Sleep on it. Next day, you'll hear some stuff that was pretty much evident, and it's been there the whole time, but you don't hear it. So next day is absolutely key. And then I guess the rule of thumb is when I find myself making a movement right on a fader, and it's like half a dB up is too loud, then I take it back down to normal. Then I'm like, well, let me try it the other way around, and I do a half dB down. It's too low. Then it seems like it's in the right spot, more or less. And then the other thing is very important to know where the clients, if there is one in this scenario, where are they listening to the records? So like, you know, are they listening to it in their studio or in their phones or on their phone, like the actual speaker? You know, I've been through some things, you know, like asking, so where are you listening? Oh no, this pristine system, I paid $2,000 for it. And I'm like, okay. Everything is on, yeah. And then it turns out the subwoofer was off. So that's why we were lacking bass, according to their point of perspective.
Got it.
So, you know, but if it's just you, absolutely. Sleep on it, and you'll hear some stuff the next day.
And it's so true. And it's hard because if you're, like if you're mixing your own stuff, then you for sure should sleep on it, because there's no rush to deliver it to anybody but yourself. And it's also an encouragement to you, because you lose perspective so quickly. I've heard Dave Pensado say that, the first few minutes to hour of the mix, he feels like he's a mixing god, and then a couple hours later, he's like, I'm awful at mixing. And then later on in the day, he thinks he's better. You have those fluctuations of like insecurity. Am I good? I'm not good. I'm good. I'm not good. Sleeping on it, you come back, you immediately realize that some stuff was better than you thought it was. And then the stuff that isn't good, you hear immediately. It's almost like you immediately know, oh, that snare is just way too loud.
Yeah.
And that's power. That's really encouraging, I think, to know, like, if you feel like it sucks, just go to sleep or get a sandwich or come back another day.
Right. And also reference the rough mix, not only other records, but also where did I start this morning kind of thing,
Ooh, that's a great point.
I always do that. In fact, in my last video that I have up right now on my YouTube channel, there's a scene where I'm actually showing them. I'm doing the Option K thing, to where I'm showing how it was before and how it is now. And so keep track of the different versions, like, okay, this was the rough, now this is test 1 or version 1 of the mix, and then version 2, and then you can put them on playlists and toggle between them so that you can actually see, because oftentimes you need to be able to switch immediately from one to the other in maybe like a bar loop or something, and then you will see, okay, am I improving the damn thing or am I just messing around?
So that's brilliant. So this is something that, someone told me to do, and I have not done it, but that makes total sense. It's like at the beginning of your mix, when you kind of get an early balance, kind of print that almost, save it, so that at the end of the day, you can see, have I actually been making it better all this time or not? But actually print your rough balance early on in the day as something to compare it to. That makes a lot of sense.
For my clients, I always ask them to send me their latest MP3 to the song together with the session, not within the session. Like I want to know what's on your phone right now and what you've been listening to in its latest edition, so that when I do that, I compare what they've been hearing for months and how it is now, so that I need to make sure that I'm beating it. When they pull it up, it needs to be like, whoa,
That makes sense.
Or else I'm gonna have to do something else. Go work at Disneyland.
It's not bad. Happiest place on earth.
Right.
All right, so a lot of new mixers, a lot of new people producing music. They're newer, all different ages. I mean, I've got people that are retiring from long careers, and they finally have time and money to buy gear, and they've always played guitar, but now they're recording.
That's right.
And then I've got 12-year-olds and younger making records, and there's talent from all those spectrums. But you're a guy that's very accomplished in the mixing side of things. You do this day in and day out. What could you say? What's maybe 1 or 2 things that you wish you knew early on when you're mixing that you kind of have learned to do now, or think about now, that you could maybe share to someone who's getting started in the mixing journey that might help them skip some of the heartache to just make mixing a little bit easier or do a little bit better?
I have the perfect answer to that. It's this button right here. The solo freaking button. This thing got me. I wasted so much time using the solo button, because when you solo it, there's nothing around it. So you're really just like making it good on its own, but nobody will ever hear that track soloed. In fact, if you're like making it kind of weaker and kind of uglier, if soloed, but it works with the entirety of the mix, then that's, goal achieved,
Yeah.
So solo, stay away from the freaking solo. In fact, what I would suggest is start with a mix that's very low. Like, I have all the faders down at, I don't know, like -20 or something if it's Pro Tools.
Okay.
And then as you're working on, say, this track, pull that up a little bit. So you do want to have it stick out a little bit, but you still want to have a bed of what's going to surround it, And then as you go, slowly, all of the other faders are going to pop up. And, sooner you're going to have everything up.
Yeah.
And so, because, everything talks to everything else. It's all related. That's why it's called a mix. It's all a balance thing, You can tell I'm Italian, right? I talk with my...
That's awesome.
But, so, solo. Don't use the solo. Yeah.
Love it. That's brilliant. No, that's absolutely right. So, okay, dude, so I love it. This has been awesome. This has been helpful. Can we do it again sometime?
Absolutely.
Okay. He does some amazing videos. Irko has taken you on tours of gear manufacturers. He's done like production of a song start to finish in a day and film the whole thing. You have awesome video content. Where can people find your videos, and how can they follow you and all that kind of stuff?
Sure. So all my social media is Irko Studio Beat. So that's easy. And then
I'll put that on the screen.
Cool. this, whatever. And then for YouTube, for the videos, yeah, just put Irko on YouTube. It'll pop up. Basically, I have a collection of documentaries. When I felt like I wanted to do some sharing, I was looking at guys like this, and he speaks so good English. Oh my God, I want to speak English like this guy. This is not gonna happen because I have an accent. But I figured
only know one language. You know multiple.
Two,
so
yes. But
twice as many.
I figured, what can I bring to the table that's a little bit different? And the fact that I've been freelancing in $1 million studios like this all over the place, I was like, I can show that experience that I have every day. And so I started doing these documentaries. So every video is a little bit different. There's a different studio, a different topic, a different agenda for the session or whatever. So that's interesting. And then I have 3 episodes of this series called My Brands, where I'm basically going to see the manufacturers of the gear that I use every day. So you see where it's made, who makes them, where, meaning the table where your 2500 API comes from, kind of thing, or whatever. So yeah, so that's my thing. And then of course I post on Instagram, cool pictures of studio and stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely. We gotta do something. I don't know, something.
Yeah, we need something.
A video together.
Yeah, and do like a mixing video or something. You can teach me how to mix hip hop or something.
I don't know if I can, but okay.
Or I can mix a hip hop record and make it sound like a rock record. That's probably what I would do. But Irko, thanks for hanging out. Everybody, go subscribe to his channel. Go watch his videos. Go follow him on social media. He's funny. You got a great Italian accent. You got a variety of bow ties. And he's just got a lot of knowledge and wisdom to share. You're one of the good guys in the industry. Just a lot of humility and your willingness to just sort of jump in the mix and share with people. So that's what I love about you. That's why I wanted to share you on the channel. But thanks for hanging out.
Thank you for having me. You guys put a good word for me with this guy so that I can maybe intern for him at some point.
Yeah, or hire this guy to mix your record, man. Do something like that. Yeah,
that's even better.
Thanks guys for watching. Subscribe to the Recording Revolution if you want to get more videos like this. Jump on the email list if you want to get some free goodies and a bunch of other exclusive content. That's it for today. We'll see you on another video real soon.